Yesterday we had part one with Cern talking about the bot invasion. The bots are coming. Oh no, what shall we do? But are they really coming, and is it really a good thing? We shall find out. I'm Brian. Welcome to Futuraza. Joining me again is Cern Basher, who has put a couple minutes of research into figuring out what's going on with bots, who all is building them, and what it means and why it matters. Let's take a look here. We were talking about tractors when last we chatted. Lo, those many days ago. It was 5 minutes ago, but that's fine. So yeah, tractors came along. The cost of labor got expensive. And what we found is the product ended up better with heavy equipment. U.S. cotton is the envy of the world because when you buy cotton from the U.S., it hasn't been touched by monkey grease. It doesn't have cigarette butts and trash in it. It's untouched. And that makes it valuable. What do we got going on here? Talk to me.
Yeah, so it's good to be back. So let's now focus on what the potential advantages of humanoid robots are. Let's answer our second question. We got through the first question in the first video. This is a partial list of what I think the potential advantages are of humanoid robots. So I'll just run through a few of these. We don't have to touch on all of them, but they're plentiful. So a robot will never be late for work, right? It will never get sick. If there's another pandemic, it can continue to work, right?
Right.
It will never quit at the worst possible time, so it reduces turnover. It'll work tirelessly. It does not need a break during the day, other than perhaps for charging. It will happily and easily perform repetitive work. It will do the same thing all day long and be perfectly happy doing it. Doesn't need healthcare, doesn't need retirement, doesn't need performance reviews, it doesn't fight with other employees, and the list goes on and on and on. And if you run a company with any number of employees, you look at this list and you're shaking your head and saying, oh my gosh, yes, I understand all these issues.
Now, if we were to, I don't know if your next slide is disadvantages, but if we were to list the disadvantages, they all have really easy answers. Well, right, but the bot can break. Well, yes, but there's another one right there that can step in. They're all already trained on all tasks. We don't have to bring in this guy and train him. It just knows what the first one knows. And you replace one broken item and now the bot's back in business. That could be done in 5 minutes, or it could be done tonight, or it could be done by another bot. It could just bring the part over and conduct the repair. On the list of disadvantages, another one that comes to mind is it wouldn't sexually harass me. And that, to me, that's a big part of being in a workplace is getting that kind of attention. If it's not going to call me toots, maybe I should program it to do that. Are there other disadvantages I'm missing?
The biggest disadvantage that I see is there won't be enough of them soon enough.
And that is it. Early on, they might be prohibitively expensive for some applications, but these will become a commodity. And there will be a cost reduction war, which will make them more and more popular over time. So my question for you guys in the comments is, looking at this list, which one is the biggest deal to you? Which one of these advantages would you love the most from your coworkers or your employees?
Yeah, so now we're on to question number 3. What is useful work? What are these bots going to do, right? And so Scott Walter offers an elegant solution to this, or an elegant answer to this. So useful work is simply when the bot can perform a task that's currently performed by a human at the same efficiency, reliability, quality, and endurance at a cost at or below a cost parity with the human wage. So if it can do tasks that humans do today at a rate that's the same or less, that's useful work.
Mm-hmm.
So humans spend a lot of time moving stuff. Bots can very easily move stuff, and the bots can move stuff for 22 hours a day,
Mm-hmm.
right? Every day, 365 days a year if you want them to.
Yeah.
So one of the huge advantages of bots is the amount of hours they can work. We need to eat and sleep. Bots only need to charge, and maybe a little bit of maintenance from time to time.
If bots are working the factory, You can turn the lights off and it keeps running. You can leave for Chinese New Year or Christmas and you come back and all the cars have been made, they've been loaded, and they've been shipped. There's no reason to stop. And seasonally adjusting for holidays would become a quaint memory. Do you remember when we used to have to shut down the factory for holidays? Interesting.
Yep.
Interesting.
No, it will definitely change the way that manufacturers look at things, and manufacturers, if they don't run 3 shifts, will want to, because that's how they'll maximize their bought labor force.
For sure. Well, I can't sell more than 1 shift worth of production. Great. What you need is a smaller factory that
Mhm.
runs 3 shifts.
That's right. So let's think about how big this opportunity is. So one thing that people know somewhat about is the oil industry. In the world, about 100 million barrels of oil are consumed every day, right? It's a crazy amount of oil. If the average cost per barrel is $75, then the value that oil consumed just in pure crude oil is $7.5 billion a day. And the oil industry itself is estimated about 19 billion a day. So they refine the products. They're not just selling crude oil; they're refining it into other products, chemicals, and so on. So the industry derives more revenue than just selling crude oil. So $19 billion a day in oil. It's a huge industry. Now think about this: the labor market in the world is estimated to be about 3.5 billion workers. Okay. And if the average wage per day is $30, which is low compared to the United States, it might be high compared to some other countries, but on average, $30 a day, then the estimated value of human labor every day is $105 billion.
Hmm.
So the labor market is 5.5 times bigger than the oil industry.
Hmm.
So if you
Hmm.
start replacing human labor with bots, it's not a stretch of the imagination to understand that this could become the world's largest industry very easily.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Now
You'd only need to replace 20% of people making $30 a day, and we'd be replacing a lot of people making $300 a day.
yes, that's right. And as a footnote there, the global auto industry generates $6 to $7 billion in revenue per day. It's a big industry too, but again,
Wow.
tiny compared to the human labor market.
Yes.
Okay. Now, let's say that won't have an opportunity to sell bots into China or other nations. The Chinese will have their own bot industry, maybe through security concerns. They're worried about our bots listening in and so on, and we might worry about their bots. So let's just say that the opportunity is only in the Western world, and I define that to be U.S., Europe, Japan, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. So the same calculations, it's about 9 times as big as the oil industry.
Right. Because you adjusted the wage to more accurately reflect a Western
Yep.
market wage. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay. So this is a massive, massive opportunity just on the raw scale of it. 500 million workers in the Western world, $82 billion a day in income, labor income.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
Okay.
we can agree this is a big opportunity. Okay. Now let's try.
I think it could. It could be.
Could be, yes. Now, let's try to answer the question of how many bots can be made. And I went down a rabbit hole here, and my conclusion with all this is we will make as many bots as we need to. Okay. Now, if you look at the world's largest automakers, largest companies make 9 to 11 million vehicles a year. If you adjust that for the weight difference of a bot between a vehicle and a bot, then the auto industry, in theory, could pump out 2.5 billion bot equivalents a year. On the other hand, if you look at the cell phone makers, Apple sells over 200 million iPhones a year, and Samsung sells about 225 million smartphones every year. The industry produces 1.3 billion devices a year, well, in bot equivalents, that's only 13 million. So my conclusion is the weight of the thing doesn't matter. It's really the ultimate market size. A third data point is refrigerators. About 200 million of those are sold every year, right? And in bot equivalents, that's about 400 million bots. So I came to the conclusion that the bot industry will make as many bots as is needed at some point. It'll take a while to scale up. And if you look at the chart there with the iPhone shipments, Apple went from 3.7 million in the first year to 231 million in 8 years, or in the ninth year.
Especially if Tesla's the first with a commercialized bot, I have no doubt that they will scale on a pace that looks like that. But if everyone has got a commercialized bot around the same time, it's definitely going to look like these numbers. Because unlike cars, these have so much fewer atoms. Yes, they've got fancy actuators and all of them are going to need a big sophisticated chip. But we know chip makers, when the product has a good margin, can crank them out very, very quickly. You can look at someone like Nvidia, who makes sure they could make more, but they still have ramped from they've ramped very quickly on their most profitable products.
That's right. And another thing to think about is batteries. So if we are going to make, let's say, 400 million bots, that is 56 billion cells, 2170 cells
How many are
a
you
year,
factoring in per
140 per bot, which is
140?
the
140.
140 cells per bot is the current estimate for the number of cells in Tesla Optimus.
Hmm.
So that would be 56 billion cells a year. Now, how many cars is that? Well, it's about 20 million EVs. You need about 60 billion batteries to make 20 million EVs.
Hmm.
So the battery industry is still scaling, and they need to scale for EVs, they need to scale for energy storage, and they need to scale for bots.
Hmm.
So in the short term, it is possible that batteries may be the limiting factor for a few years, but the battery industry will rise to the occasion and make enough cells for all those items eventually.
And I'm less worried about that. I don't see the bot as being as critical and high drain as automotive. And I think if they're using 140 now, I don't know that that's the final number that they would actually use, because I believe that there are efficiencies coming, and the
Mm-hmm.
next chipset would surely be higher compute and without increasing the drain and maybe even decreasing it. I think for a lot of what the bot will be doing at any given time, the power consumption would be quite a bit lower than what we're seeing now.
Yes, and I think also we'll see for a lot of applications, the bots can just remain plugged in,
Mm-hmm.
so that
Mm-hmm.
may reduce the need for batteries as well.
Yeah. And if you put the plug somewhere that's out of the way, maybe behind it, then you just, use the butt plug and away you
Mm-hmm.
go.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now let's try to answer the question of how much it will cost to make a bot.
Mm-hmm.
Now I've got a couple of different slides here from a couple of different people. This estimate is about $12,000 per bot. Now, this is not the cost of what the bot will be tomorrow. This will take some time to get the cost of a bot down to this level. But anytime you're making things at sufficient scale, you're likely able to drive down the cost of making the bot. Now, I compare this to a Model 3, right? And the bot weighs about 3% of the weight of a Model 3. And if a Model 3 costs about 30,000-ish to make, right, the bot at 3% of the weight might cost about 40% of the cost of the Model 3. It's highly unlikely at scale it's going to cost more than a Model 3. So the upper limit, you know, shouldn't be more than $30,000. Initially, it might be more, but at scale, it'll be far less than that. And then the second estimate is from Scott Wolter. His numbers are even a little bit lower, about $8,000 to $9,000 per bot at scale. So about 28% of the cost of a Model 3. And there may even be some downside opportunity with this over time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And I would say that these numbers are reasonable. What it costs to buy, however, like you said, does not need to be connected to what it costs to make. Yes,
That's
we'd
right.
like it to be higher than that, but really, I wouldn't be surprised if you cannot purchase them at any price, that you can only lease them for whatever price. But there will be competition, and if the competition's selling one and that ends up being substantially cheaper, you get into a whole different value proposition and weighing your options that way.
Yeah, so let's dig into that. That's actually a very good point. So here's how I've approached this problem or this issue. So let's first of all look at the cost of human labor. Let's focus on the $15 an hour wage rate. If you pay somebody $15 an hour, you have other costs, right? There are taxes and benefits that you have to pay. Okay. There's also some corporate overhead and stuff, but this is just to the employee. So $15 an hour might work out to $21, $22 an hour after taking into account a whole bunch of taxes and benefits. Okay. So I'm calling this the effective hourly wage for $15 an hour worker. And you
Right.
can see it at other wage rates what those effective hourly costs are, right? So if you're paying somebody $40 an hour, it's going to cost you more like 60. Okay.
For sure.
All right. So now let's take a look at the next slide, and I'll back into how I arrived at these numbers in a minute. But at $15 an hour, my bots model has the cost of a humanoid robot at about $7.50 an hour. Okay. Now that includes the cost of renting the bot, and I agree with you. I think it'll be robots as a service. I don't think people will be able to buy them. The cost of renting a bot, perhaps some cost of maintenance, the cost of charging, the cost of human minders. We're not just going to allow the bots to run free in a factory just yet. There's going to be people there to manage them and mind them. The cost of insurance and the cost of protective equipment, footwear, clothing, whatever it might be. Maybe even some tools for the bot, specialized tools. That's all on that 750 figure. And you can see that there's a significant difference between the cost of human labor and the cost of the bots. Now, the numbers on the bottom are the wage rates. So it's $15 an hour wage rate. And I'm using that as a proxy for the kind of work that the bot is capable of doing. So if you pay a human $15 an hour to do something, then that's a proxy for the capability of the bot. And so a bot doing work at that level would cost you 750.
And that 750 is all in, as opposed to the 15, which is actually 2185.
That's correct.
Okay.
Now, it was an interesting conclusion that I came to, and it's shown on this page, that the savings by using a bot versus a human is very similar to the wage rate. So at $15 an hour, the savings per hour is $14.39 in my model. At 40, the savings is $41.20. So the wage rate actually might be a very good proxy for the amount of money that you can save. If you want a shortcut method for figuring out how much money you could save in your factory, take your wage rate by the number of employees, and that might be the amount of money that you can save. Now, obviously, it's going to be factory specific and company specific, but just as a broad brush, I think we're in the ballpark of those kinds of numbers.
I don't know if you've seen what the L&I rate is for roofers, but it's substantially more than their wage because
Mm-hmm.
it's a very dangerous job, prone
Mm-hmm.
to injuries, and some of them are permanent. So,
Right, and I think these numbers here are actually quite conservative too, because I haven't included the cost of HR, legal, all those other overhead expenses. You
training,
know,
yeah,
training. Yeah,
yeah. Heat, I mean, you don't need
right.
as much climate control. The comfortable operating temperature for robots is substantially wider than for humans, I have found.
That's right. So what this allows us to do then is to calculate what the lifetime savings could be of deploying bots. So again, focusing on that middle $15 wage rate as a proxy for a certain type of work, over the lifetime of a bot, and I assumed in this model the bot lasts for 10 years. A company, if they deployed a bot, could save $615,000 a year by using a bot versus human, not a year, sorry, over the lifetime of the bot, $615,000 over the lifetime by using a bot versus a human. So I use that savings, that value added, to determine what is the bot worth, right? If I'm providing you with a product that's allowing you to save $615,000 over 10 years, what will you be willing to pay me? I am just assuming in this model you'll pay me half of your savings. That you'd be happy to pay me $307,000 because you would get to keep $307,000. And by the way, this is the present value of the savings. It's not future dollars. It's today's dollars. So it's possible that the bot makers actually can receive more than 50% of the savings. but my base assumption is that they collect 50% of the savings to their customers.
So at
And
first
that means,
blush, yeah, at first blush, I'm looking at it saying 307. That's crazy. No one's paying 300 grand. But you said 10 years. That's 3,000 a year or 30,000 a year. That's 2,500 bucks a month. That is not an outrageous amount for a lease on a laborer that can work 22 to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're under $100 a day for 24 hours of labor. And that $100, that extra 500, it's not going to use that much juice. It's not going to need that much in repairs. So all of a sudden, that 300,000 over 10 years number seems reasonable again.
that's right. This is also one of the reasons I think that companies won't sell bots, because of the sticker shock, right? The idea of buying a bot for $300 or $600,000 is probably pretty crazy. There's also the risk, like how long is the bot going to last? We don't know. No one knows. So the bot maker will probably take on that responsibility themselves. And if the bot breaks, they just give you a new bot.
If you're renting it, yeah, return it when it's broken. And
Yeah.
for that matter, don't even have a tech on site. Just have them swap it out. And if you're a big enough customer, you might have a couple spares that have not yet been commissioned just around with you. One example of scale like this is there are farmers who no longer own combines. They bring in a contractor who shows up with 12, 15, 20 combines, and they burn through your field in a day or two. John Deere has a tech that travels with those guys because one of those combines will have a problem. And it doesn't matter if it's 1/5 of your workforce that's down, 1/5 of your combines are offline, 5% of your combines are offline, or for that matter, 1/5, but they can get it fixed and keep them in motion. And a policy like that, if you've got 100 bots, they might just send you 2 extra so you don't have to worry about repairs. When one's got an issue, you put it back in the closet and the new one comes out.
I think that's exactly right.
Okay, so we're running a bit long again. Let's go ahead and wind this down. But there are a lot of questions. What do you want to hear us talk about in the next one? Tough to say because it's already recorded. But what thoughts do you have about what we just talked about? How crazy is it? I do want to thank Cern for hanging out with me over there. Follow him, link in the description, all that good stuff. Everybody else, like, subscribe, do the usual thing. Stay tuned, stay juicy, and I cannot wait to hear from you, clever robots, in the thrilling conclusion in part 3.